presenting your host for the Racecoin podcast, Jay.
Hi guys, welcome to the Racecoin podcast. I'm joined by Alexandra. She has over 20 years of experience in the industry and has worked for many agencies, Pirelli and the FIA, and now she runs her own business consulting company and now in the motorsport and the PR communications department. So welcome to the show, Alexandra. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
So let's kick it off. I mean, what got you into motorsports and how did you turn that into your drive into go into motorsports into a business?
Well, funnily enough, I happened to end up in motorsport by accident. I actually never really thought about going into motorsport. It just happened basically in the mid-90s. I sort of answered a job ad in a paper by Toyota. And I thought, yeah, Toyota cars, press department, let's just try. Yeah. And then when I actually did the interview, I found out it was their rally team. And I was like, okay, yeah, fine, why not? Yeah. And for some reason, they took me on. And it was quite a steep learning curve at the beginning because, to be honest with you, I had no idea about cars. I didn't know a rally car from a Formula One car, which today, like every motorsport fan would go like, oh my God, but I didn't. And then I learned fairly quickly and I quite liked it. And then once you're in this kind of business, I guess, you're in it, unless you are really not suited to it or you really don't like it, you stay in it because it's a very, very small world.
So what kind of things do you need to be suited for the industry? And just one point about seeing the paper and the ad, basically, in today's day and age where everyone's, applying for jobs online, it's such a different story to hear about how you first got into it. A quick little question as well about your background. So what did you actually study beforehand before, you actually applied for this job ad? So it wasn't quite related.
No, I studied languages. I have a background in languages and some economics. But I wasn't made out to work in PR or press or anything. And it all started with this first job, really, which was in the press department. And I learned the ropes, well, learning by doing, really. And then I took some additional training while I was working at the same time. So I did a PR course for a long time at the London School of PR, for example, when I lived in London. And really learn by doing, which I guess today is rather unusual because you do tend to have all the exams, the MBAs and whatnot.
Yeah, and all the qualifications. Yeah,
exactly. But at my time, it really happened like this. So yeah, what qualifications do you need? Really, PR is all about common sense, really. The teacher I had at the London School of PR, actually, he told us PR is 5% knowledge and 95%, well, he called it bullshit, but I will call it sense.
Well, I mean, obviously there is, good PR agencies and bad PR agencies, right? So recently, you went and set yourself up a PR agency yourself. So how is yours different to other PR agencies out there, for example?
Well, different is that it's mine. So that sounds funny, but obviously it's the touch and how you do PR. It's a very personal thing in a way. So I tend to how to explain that? I've been in motorsport for so long. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of media, and my job is to get my clients into the media or to get them better known, or also to manage their reputation. So it's different sides, all of the story. So I'm not sure I'm really different in the way I do PR, because all PR agencies, that's what they do. They make sure their client is in the media or in the public eye. But the difference is, I guess, it's me. It sounds strange,
of course, yeah. I mean, for example, one of the natural USPs is that you're a female in a male-dominated sport. So how does that sort of influence the way in which you do business and you work with people?
I think my thing is I'm not really 100% a motorsport fan. I'm not completely mad about it. I'm interested in sport. I like it. I follow it. But I have all through the 20 plus years I'm in the field, I've kept a certain distance to it, and I think that's also a way of success. I'm not a fan as such, so I can keep a distance. I can keep a neutral eye to things. Which was a huge advantage, for example, when I worked for the FIA, because obviously as the motor ring governing body, they you need to be neutral. You cannot afford to have
Biases, yeah.
yes. I had favorites, but I wouldn't let it on in public, So,
yes, of course.
so being a female, I think it was more of an advantage because you get, see, people notice you more. And if you know your business, if you actually know what you're talking about, they listen to you more as well. So I've always found it was an advantage rather than a disadvantage.
So being in the industry for so many years, naturally, as you got more and more experience, at what stage did you feel like it was the right time to set up your own business? Like what inspired you to say, look, do you know what? Like now I feel like I am ready to go off on my own and do my own thing.
I had the idea of the first time probably crossed my mind was maybe 10 years ago, so quite soon actually. So that must have been at the time when I was working at the FIA, but it was more of a, maybe that's an idea to do in the future. It was not something I wanted to do imminently then, but I always knew that it would be something I wanted to try when the time was right. And the time was right actually 5 years ago, sort of about 5 years ago, when I really got fed up with traveling. That was my main reason. I spent 6 months plus a year in hotels, in planes, away from home, and I just basically had enough. And the trigger point was at one point during the winter break, after having done more like 10, 12 full seasons of Formula One. I looked at pictures and I thought, I've just seen this photo, and I had, but it was the picture of the year before, because
yeah, it's like deja vu, but it's actually reality.
Exactly. So that's when I thought, I think it's about time.
Yeah, of course. And how's that process been? Because naturally now, you're having to face the problems and kind of taking on the full responsibility of everything, right? You're the last line of defense almost. So, naturally you're dealing with teams, sponsors, so many different types of people. And what kind of hurdles are you facing now that are different to when you were just working for someone else?
Obviously, when you work for somebody else, you have just one subject in a way. So you deal with the same company, the same issues more or less. And you're more on the, I'd like to say, defending line. So when I work for Pirelli or for the big companies or even for the agencies, you have a certain amount of customers and you sort of defend their interests. Whereas now, obviously I have a lot of different customers from different areas, or motorsports, but they do different things. For example, I work for a circuit, I work for a sponsor, I work for sort of like a motorsport association. So it's different angles to the same thing. And you constantly have to look at the different needs of your different clients, I guess, and find the best way forward. And often also, sorry, it's just you work with, I work with other people, but the ideas and the ultimate decision is mine. So that's what is a bit tricky.
I have a cheeky question. So who is the hardest type of people to work with out of all the people that you now have to deal with and, everything? Who are the most troublesome people?
That's a really tricky question, actually. I don't really, I wouldn't say I work with troublesome people. That is sort of the advantage of being your own agency. I try to sort of work with people or pick people I know I will work with in a good way. Because if you, obviously when you meet a potential new client and you have initial discussions and you have the feeling it's not going to work for whatever reason, because you have different expectations, because you look at things differently, I tend not to take the contract because I know I cannot fulfill what they want from me. So up to now, I've been lucky. I've only been working with companies or clients that really worked out well.
Very well politically said, I have to say. That was very well done. So in your one-to-one consulting and, in PR in general, you have so many different types of aspects to it, right? Like, so which are the most crucial, and what do you feel works best when it does come to PR and working with various types of clients?
It obviously it depends on what the client wants. If you have a big sponsor, it's not the same as you have like an upcoming driver, for example. So you need to look at what they want, and also one of the biggest things is really to manage expectations. So all of them, obviously, they want to be like with one press release, they want to have like, I don't know, 100 press coverage and be on CNN or whatever. It doesn't work like that. So actually, it's when you work with somebody who's like a newcomer, you have to sort of explain the mechanisms of how PR works and what to expect from it. And then pick the best sort of channels or best communication ways for them that actually fits their personality, but also their budget, obviously. So it's different sides to the story. What's good about PR is really there's so many different elements, and you can really pick and choose. As you said, you have just the press work, you have obviously public relations, like public events, you have today also social media side, you have sponsor events, you have so many different sides to the story, and you just pick what suits best for the client in front of you, really.
So now that you have these clients, you've obviously had so much experience in the industry. What is it about PR that really drives you, that gives you that fulfillment with working with these clients?
It's obviously when they are happy. So when they actually tell me that they are happy with the result, whatever the result is they wanted. For me, that's a big driving mechanism. But what also is very important, where you can actually measure it, is, for example, when you have a piece in the paper or you have something on television where you spoke to the journalist, or you sort of in a way sold the story to the journalist because you explained the advantages of your client and they wanted to write about it. So that's always quite a nice thing. Or when you manage an event that actually turned out well. So that's the good side about it, because one of the the difficult sides of PR is really it's hard to measure in any ways. Yeah. So it's hard to know whether you really, whether your work actually helps that your driver or the circuit actually gets more attention in the public eye. So it's good when you actually physically see something that you have done.
Yeah, and get tangible results, exactly. So you've worked with some big teams and big names. Do you mind sharing a few and what kind of differences they have between, for example, someone who is a newbie in the industry compared to working with some more veterans?
I tend not to give away names of current clients for few reasons, but I've worked with, obviously, when I was still working for people, I have some big names. Obviously, I worked for Pirelli, I worked for the Federation, the FIA, I worked for Toyota, so it's quite some big companies with different aspects to the sport. That was quite interesting. And I worked with some young drivers with small companies, and it's all different side of the story. It's all the main thing is managing expectations, really, in whatever way. But I'll share one client with you, or one contract I did. I think it was 2 years ago. I had a very interesting project with IndyCar. That was quite great. So they wanted to do some promotion in Europe, and they contacted me to run a promotion, like a press event for them in France. Mm-hmm. And that was it was obviously just a project, so it didn't last very long, but it was something very interesting because working with Americans, also with IndyCar, which is, like, if you like, the American Formula One, was very interesting for me with a background in Formula One and sort of 20 years in the sport. You tend to get a little bit of, the blinders, like a horse, and yeah. So it's cool to see a different side and how other series, or big series, actually approach more or less the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely so many different facets to it. And I think one side that really is interesting is when there's crisis communication that you have to do as a PR agency. So what kind of things have you had to deal with in the past? Can you give us an example of that? And what sort of things does it involve when there is a crisis?
Um, I've been lucky that with my clients, I haven't had a major sort of crisis, which is a good sign, maybe in a way that I'm managing things the way I don't know it should be. But I've been lucky so far. But before that, I've really become the master of crisis communication, mainly at the FIA. We had a lot of, as we call them, gates. So you had a lot of the spy gate, the lie gate, the Mosley gate. So, for example, when my boss at the time, Max Mosley, he had a personal issue as he was found having some personal business with women, and that came on the front page of the newspapers, which wasn't
Great.
was difficult to manage.
Yeah.
But I give you one example. Was, for example, then you have the accidents, which I also had to manage at the FIA, which are not obviously very emotional thing and not difficult to handle because life are at stakes, and it's from an emotional point of view, it's quite tough. So that's a different side of the story. But the classic crisis communication maybe is when it comes to product management, for example. And I give you an example is when I worked with Pirelli in their second year of coming back to Formula One. They had a lot of tires that exploded that didn't last for a number of reasons, and obviously it was my job to explain what happened and make sure that the public understood what the issue was. So obviously, if you have a tire that explodes, it's not great for a tire manufacturer. So
Yeah, of course.
crisis management is mainly understanding what's happening. So obviously, the first step can be to apologize if it's something you've done wrong, and then actually manage the steps, speaks to the media, tell them what's happening as much as you can. Sometimes you can't say something. So and that's what you're going to say. You say, I haven't got the facts yet. Let me look at it. I'll come back to you. So a crisis management is avoiding that the crisis gets bigger.
That's I mean, it sounds like a tough job in various aspects, you know, dealing with the clients themselves and then dealing with the public image of it as well. It's like a two-sided coin in one sense. And you know, you've actually worked with rally racers, you know, you've worked in GT, you've worked in smaller Formula, Formula One. There's so many different facets that you've worked with now. And do these skills that you have in different parts of the racing world intertwine, or are they complementary to each other, or is it something that is, you know, a different aspect and therefore you have to acquire different skills to work in those different fields?
Interesting question. I'd say they're sort of building on each other in the sense that it's still motorsport, but obviously different levels of it. So if you work in a smaller formula, it's not the same amount of media, and it's not the same amount of media coverage.
Does that make your job easier?
Sorry?
Does that make your job easier just because there is less media coverage?
No, it's actually it's actually what it makes, well, not harder but different, because then your job is to get media coverage.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be quite difficult, because obviously journalists get solicited a lot. They get a lot of proposals made to them, lots of ideas pitched to them, and then particularly for smaller series, they go like, yeah, but why should I write about this driver and not about that driver? Good question. So it's the answer I have to give. And whereas in Formula One, in big series, it's the opposite. It's about managing what the media writes. So I don't know, imagine any like Lewis Hamilton or the big drivers, Sebastian Vettel. Their name is constantly in the media, and not always in the way they wanted to. So the job of their PR officers is to make sure that is sort of portrayed in a maybe
controlled way, almost, yeah.
Exactly.
Rather than getting some more in limelight for them, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So yes, these series, they build on each other because the tools you're using are the same. but you need to adjust them to fit the client or the series.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really stuck out when I was looking into the kind of things you've worked on is one of your interviews with Will Buxton, and you mentioned that in a PR interview, in an interview with him, sorry, that you try in PR to add meat to the bones and put it in the best light possible, whereas a journalist is trying to pick away through the meat and get to the bones and the real story behind it. So it's almost like you have two opposite sides of the coin trying to, battle each other, yet still work together in tandem.
Yeah.
Is that something that you feel is true? And is that something that you feel you agree with?
Well, the PR and journalism are complementary professions, so one couldn't exist without the other, I'd say. So they help each other in an ideal world. So the journalist needs information, and you want him to write about the information you want to give. Then obviously your side of the story is maybe a different one than the journalist wants to hear. So yes, his job is picking through the PR, whereas there's a difference between sort of PR is always one side of the story or a side of the story, but it should never be a lie. So that is something that is very, very important, I think, for two reasons, really. To lie about something is very hard to remember afterwards what you actually said and sort of keep the story going, one thing. And the other is you will always be found out. So, and then it will be even worse. So don't lie. So don't write something in a press release or say something to a journalist that is not actually true. But yeah, give him your side of the story. For example, if you say, something is good, it doesn't sound the same way as if you say, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
So it's a simple example, but it's the same thing. You're saying the same thing, but in a different way. So yeah, it's his job to actually write the story he thinks is there without obviously lying himself. So he needs to have the facts as well. And yeah, the PR needs to make sure the client or the company they're working for is shown in the best possible light. Not always the easiest, but interesting.
Definitely. And I think that sums it up really well, because you've, described exactly what PR is all about, and, what kind of different facets there are, what kind of different industries it is possible to work in. And also, I think it would be great if you could leave the fans with a message about what PR can do for a client, because I feel, for certain new people or certain people who aren't fully there yet, they don't understand the impact it can have. And therefore, if you can just brief us about how important it is to have the right sort of PR.
Yes, indeed. If you don't do PR, I mean, PR is like a construct for a lot of people. As you say, they don't necessarily know what it is, they don't understand it, and then you always have the reaction, I don't need it. Or say if you're a driver, you go, oh no, I don't really want to be in the limelight, I only want to drive. Yeah, fine. But there are like, I don't know, 5,000 other drivers who are in the same situation. And why should somebody pick you? And that's where PR comes in. It's basically finding your USP and making sure that people out there know about it, so that you are the next whatever Formula 1 driver or the next IndyCar driver or whatever it is you aspire to. But PR will help you to make sure that what people know about you is what you want them to know, and make sure they get to know it in the best possible way.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. I feel like that has been an awesome sharing of exactly what PR is about and why it's so important. So it's been a pleasure having you on the Racecoin podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jay. It was a pleasure talking about PR. Thank you.